pretty easy to think that people, as a general rule, know themselves very well. That's a pretty easy thing to imagine, but you really have to ask yourself the question, how well do you know yourself and what you want, what you're desirous to have out of life, right? Hello and welcome to the Daily Summation from Kurt's Religion and Politics. I'm your host. I am Kurt. Glad to have you aboard this morning. It is Tuesday, the 24th of November of 2020. And I just, like I say, wanted to welcome those aboard who are coming on Rumble, on the podcast, and on YouTube. And remember that the podcast is available on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Spotify. And again, the subject of the Daily Summation today is Know Yourself. It's easy to think that we know the things that we really want and desire out of our lives. It's easy to think that. But the thing about it is, if you don't take the time to sit down and actually work that out for yourself along the way and really understand, and one of the things that I think a lot of people fail to do is to put that in the context of the various things that they at least claim to, if not actually do, believe. This is an important thing, right? The thing about it is, you can look at who you think you want to be, and you can think, I want to be rich, I want to be famous, I want whatever. And then you can look at what your beliefs say, and you can find out that those are not really things that you should be all that much wanting to have, right? So that to begin with is something that I think a lot of people don't do. They don't do an inventory of who they are to begin with. They don't look and say, I'm good at this, I'm not good at that, and so forth. And it's very hard to be honest about that. Let's face it. It's not an easy thing to be honest about whether or not I'm good at this or I'm bad at that. And a million years ago, I thought I was a billiards player, pool player, right? And I played against this guy, and this guy said to me, dude, you're horrible. You're a horrible player. And I thought to myself, how dare you? I didn't say it out loud because this was in the military to begin with, and he was a higher ranking individual than I was. And so that was point one, and I knew it because he was wearing his uniform and me mine, right? But the point is, it freed me from the error of thinking that I was actually good at that thing for somebody who was good at it. And he was very good at billiards, right? By comparison to most people. To sit down and tell me, you're horrible at this. And what made it even better is then he started to actually school me. And I don't mean what most people mean when they say school these days. I mean, he sat down and he said, look, here's how you want to form a bridge. Here's how you want to stroke the cue. Here's, and give me all of these various things. This is a shot you probably can make. Here's the English you want to put on the ball if you want to accomplish this effect. And started to really clue me in on some things that I didn't know. And this is an important thing. If you don't know who you are, you have a tendency to not be willing to take advice of this sort from other people. And that's obviously a very basic example, right? These days I've figured out when I walk into a situation, most of the time I walk into the situation with the idea, teach me, help me to understand what it is that I need to know and who it is that I need to be, because this is going to be the thing that's going to be helpful to me and ultimately that's going to be helpful to you. So not knowing yourself puts you at a bunch of disadvantages. And one of them is that you don't realize what you don't know, what you aren't, and so forth, right? And that's very important. And here's the thing. If you do that, if you live in a world where you don't know yourself and you choose not to learn who you are, it puts you at this disadvantage of another sort. And it is that there are people out there who will learn who you are through interaction with you and so forth. And they will figure out how to manipulate that person, right? So that what they're doing is they're looking at you and they're going, this is who this person is, and this is what I can do to get them to do things that I want them to do. I'm not largely a conspiracy theorist, and I'm particularly not that on a individual basis, right? If there are conspiracies going on, they mostly are not involving just one person like me, right? I tell people, and this sounds really harsh, but I think it's true. Look, for the most part, people are not interested in you. If you think that people are out to get you, or you're paranoid, or you think people are out to get you, or whatever. And I know that there's paranoid schizophrenia and various things that are problems that are it doesn't really matter what I say, and I'm not trying to address that person per se. I'm trying to address people who think that there are others out there who are seeking to get at them, when in reality, most of the time, other people aren't bothering to look at them because it's not worth their time. But that doesn't mean that people won't try to manipulate you into particular positions that they think will be to their benefit. I'm not trying to say that. They will. People will do that. That's a reality. And if they know who you are better than you do, then they can take advantage of that fact to try and put you in positions where you're doing things that they want you to do, right? And so oftentimes that's to your detriment. Here's the other thing. If you don't know yourself, then you don't know, you haven't done that evaluation, you haven't gone through that checklist and said, I'm this, I'm this, I'm not this, I'm not this, then you don't really know what you probably ought to be working towards. So knowing yourself, in other words, gives you something to strive to, some the ability to set goals towards which you may strive, towards which you may work. This is part of what knowing yourself will do for you, right? Not knowing yourself, it's not that you won't have goals, but it's that sometimes the goals that you set are not good goals, because you're starting from a warped perspective of self that makes it so that you don't realize, I have to be able to do this thing before I can get to that thing. So you set it in your mind, I need to do that thing, and you fall on your face as a result, because you didn't figure out, I need to do this other thing that I'm not thinking I need to do, because it's not something I'm good at, right? And this is reality. So there are any number of things, right, about knowing yourself that I think it's important to point out. One of them is that process of getting to know yourself is not some simple process. It's a process that extends probably through the majority of your life. Look, I'm over 50 and I'm still figuring out things about who I am. And it's really taking a hard look at myself. One thing that people do that's a problem, right, is they'll see that there's some failing or falling in themselves, and they'll kick themselves repeatedly for failing or falling in that way. Well, look, the thing is, that's really not helping anything. That's really not helping anything. Knowing yourself is helping. Kicking yourself for your failure is not. The trick is to be able, people say, oh, you have to be able to forgive yourself. I get what they're saying. I don't think it's what they think a lot of people think that means. But that being said, you do have to be able to say, look, regardless who's at fault here, regardless who's to blame, the question is, what do I do about it? And if you don't know yourself, well, how can you even begin to answer that question, right? If you don't know who I am, how can I think, yes, this is a problem. Yes, it's a problem in me. How do I fix this? Everybody knows themselves to some degree, but I think the deeper the dive, the better off everybody would be. And I'm not saying that from a perspective of you should go totally introvert, right? I'm saying that from a perspective of you should take the time to reflect on who you are and figure out who that is, and then use that information to work to make yourself more like who you want to be and less like who you are at the present. And maybe you'll look at yourself and you'll say, in general, I think I'm in pretty good shape. Maybe. But if you're like me, I'm pretty sure you'll find the answer to that is, in some regard, in some way, that's not the case, and there are things that I need to work on. Again, that doesn't mean get all sucked into yourself or anything like that. I'm not trying to say that. But again, the important thing is, if you don't know yourself, you don't know, it's hard for you to say where you're going. It's hard for you to say how other people are going to take advantage of who you are. And it definitely puts you at a distinct disadvantage. And like I say, that doesn't mean you beat yourself up over it. You just do what you need to do. Okay, I need to wrap up. Again, this is the Daily Summation from Kurt's Religion and Politics. Today is, as I said, Tuesday, the 24th of November of 2020. That means tomorrow will be Wednesday, the 25th of November of 2020. And again, thank you for those of you tuning in on Rumble, the podcast, and YouTube. And remember, you can get my podcast on Apple Podcasts, on Google Podcasts, and on Spotify. Thank you for tuning in today, and hopefully we will see you again tomorrow. The speaker on this edition of the Daily Summation is Kurt Schubert. This video is recorded on Tuesday, the 24th of November, 2020. The Daily Summation is created for Kurt's Religion and Politics. Thanks for checking out this video. Remember that you can like it on YouTube and you can give it a rumble on Rumble if you want to do that. I have channels on both YouTube and Rumble. They are the Kurt's Religion and Politics channels. You can subscribe to either one of those if you want to do so. Remember, if you subscribe on YouTube, you probably want to click the notification bell in order to be notified of new content. If you want to see more from me, you can check me out on my blog. That's blogs.kpschubert.com, blogs.kpschubert.com. You can also see my Facebook page. That is Kurt's Religion and Politics on Facebook. You can check out my Twitter, Parler, and Minds.com accounts. My handle on all three of those is at kpschubert. That's at kpschubert. You can check out my podcast. The podcast is at podcasts.kpschubert.com. That's podcast.kpschubert.com. And finally, you can check me out on Patreon. And if you want to support me, that's probably one of the better places that you can do that. I am Kurt's Religion and Politics there. Thanks again for checking out this video, and hopefully we will see you again tomorrow.